Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. Welcome to Food for Thought, August 6, 2021. We are walking through the Gospel of John. We are trying to see, hear, love, and live Jesus, which is the plan that Jesus used for his first disciples. I've become convinced over the years that the best way to disciple people is to take people directly to Jesus and leave them with him. And as they develop this ability to hear him, to see him, hear him, love him, and live him, then they'll be on their way to participating in the plans of God. I love the local church. I love the Bible colleges, the seminaries. I love all the kind of things that are there to help us, that are the resources. But nothing and no one can take the place of Jesus Christ. We've been reading in John chapter 1. Yesterday we ended our time with one of the most incredible verses in all of the Bible, which says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." As John is writing and opening up this beginning of his story about what he saw, what he experienced, what he lived, while in the presence of Jesus for 3.5 years, he introduces us to a figure in the Bible, a person, John the Baptist. This is not John who's writing, but John the Baptist, the one that many call the last prophet of the Old Testament. But certainly John thinks of him as the one who came to prepare the way for people to begin to see, hear, love, and live Jesus. So he says this, John the Baptist, bore witness of him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness we have received, and grace, for the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him." Now this is the testimony of John when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Christ." And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you, that we may give an answer to those who sent us? What do you say about yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way of the Lord,' as the prophet Isaiah said." Now those who were sent there were from the Pharisees, and they asked him, saying, "Why then do you baptize if you are not the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet?" John answered, saying, "I baptize with water, but there stands one among you whom you do not know. It is he coming after me is preferred before me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loose." These things were done in Bethabara, beyond the Jordan, where John was baptizing. There's so much in this interaction here of the author, John, with the person of John the Baptist. But the thing that most calls my attention, and I'd like to turn your attention there like a guide would turn your attention, I believe that John represents for all of us an invitation, a divine invitation to participate in the purposes and the plan of God. You know, I'm sure that God, in his sovereignty and power, can do anything he wants to do the way he wants to do it. But one thing becomes very, very clear in this first chapter of John is he wants to include human beings in this story of redemption. As John says, he very clearly says, "I am not the Christ, and I am not the prophet," meaning the Messiah. And he says, "I am not this and I am not that. But what I am, I know what I am, and I know who I am. I am a voice crying in the wilderness, or in the world, make straight the way for the Lord." I really find it fascinating that God wants to include us in his plan for humanity. He invites us in. If you study the life of John the Baptist, his whole conception, from his mother's conceiving of him with his father, his whole conception was planned perfectly. It was timed. God orchestrated his circumstances to put John in exactly the right moment. He's born about 6 months before Jesus was born. And it's an amazing picture of the sovereignty of God at work among us. But the thing I think that I want to take your attention to is, if you know anything about the story of John, you know that his life ends while he is in prison. He doesn't understand everything that Jesus is doing. Apparently, God did not reveal to him what everything that the Messiah would do and how he would do it. And so John, he needs some encouragement, and he receives encouragements that Jesus sends to him. And then his life ends. He is violently killed. His head is cut off because of intrigue in the political realm of the nation of Israel. It's an incredible story. And we can learn a lot about our own walk with Jesus. We need to know what we are not, but we also need to know what we are. Not many years ago, I came across a couple of statements from some authors that have highly influenced me. One was a man named Mike Wells, and another is E. Stanley Jones. And I began to realize that there was an echo between their writings and between the way they were living. And so it spurred me to learn something about poverty of spirit. And I believe poverty of spirit is the key to being able to cooperate with the plan of God. And I think we can hear this poverty of spirit in John, where he says, I am not this and I am not that. Well, I've begun a habit of getting up in the morning, and as I put my hand over my heart and I make a declaration that Jesus, it is so wonderful that you live in me. You are the entire Christian life I'm going to live. And I go through my little prep before I even get out of bed, and I'm aligning myself with the purposes of God for my life, and I'm finding my place. And I sometimes will say this, many times, almost every day I will say, I am not, but he, Jesus, is. I don't know, but Jesus knows. I can't, but he can. I don't have, but he has. It's like John the Baptist. John the Baptist is a picture of us, which just says, he must increase and I must decrease. Poverty of spirit is an understanding that without Jesus, we can do nothing. But we have been invited to be important and useful to this process of God's revelation of God's true character in the world. And I really believe it's important that we pay attention to the way John is positioned here in this first chapter of the Gospel of John, where he comes on the scene and he's totally different, and he's not like any religious leader that they'd ever seen, and he has a strange kind of diet and a strange kind of clothing, and he is so out of step, it would seem, with all the world that's around him. But he knows his place and he knows his role, and he says, I am a voice. I am a voice. And I say what I'm not. I know I'm not the Messiah. I know I'm not even worthy to take the shoes off of Jesus' feet. I know that without God's power, I can do nothing. But I have been invited in to do my part. You know, I really believe that when we present ourselves before the Lord and we just say, your will be done, that we might find ourselves on a path of living in the same home our entire life, or we might find ourselves traveling to the four corners of the world. We may find ourselves, like John, in prison for our faith. We may find ourselves leading a company all of our life and taking good care of our family and being a member of the local church in our community, or we might find ourselves in a country where even our faith is persecuted, and we're living under the oppression of a godless regime. But there's this thing I think that we can find in common with John, and that is we need to know that we are not the Christ. We need to know that we are not the true prophet. We need to know that he is so different from us that we're not even worthy to touch his shoes. We need to know that as we look at who Jesus is and who we are, we need to say, I am not, but he is. I can't, but he can. I don't have, but he has. I don't know, but he knows. That's not demeaning. That's just telling the truth. That's just saying, this is who I am and this is who I'm not. We would be far better off, I think, in our Christian churches and in our Christian lives if we would solidly understand that this division between who he is and who we are is, we cannot bridge that by our effort, but we can be invited into the flow of his plan. It's what I think he meant when he said, you must take up your cross and you must follow me. You must give your life away in order to find your life, or you lose your life to find it. It sounds like a contradiction, but are you saying that John the Baptist had a problem with self-image? No, I'm saying John the Baptist knew the truth, and the truth set him free. Oh yeah, the truth sure set him free. He got his head cut off in jail. Yeah, but listen to what Jesus said. He said he was the greatest there was up until that point in the kingdom of heaven. But then Jesus goes on to say that there'll be many more even greater than John. So this thing about human beings being a part of the plan of God is going to go on and on and on. And you are a part of that plan. You have been invited in. You say, Bud, my place is so insignificant. I guess John probably thought that too. He was in prison and he still didn't quite understand what was going on. And then when they came to cut his head off, I'm not sure God explained anything to him. He may have gone to his last moment of life going, well, I hope I did my part. Well, here we are 2,000 years later and we're talking about him. I would say he did his part. The question is, do we want to accept this invitation? And if we do, then we'll have to live the entire time with poverty of spirit, which says, he is, I'm not. He has, I don't. He knows, I don't. He can, I can't. Do you have trouble with that? I don't have trouble with that. I found that when I am at that, what I call sacred zero, I'm excited to be able to do my part. And my part may be very small and seem very insignificant. To me, at times it certainly does. But in the end, I'm just thrilled I get to be a part of the story. And I hope you feel thrilled too. Obviously, I'm not hoping to end up in a prison being beheaded. But even if that happened, I would be in good company. And I know where I would go when I die. God bless you. Have a great day.